Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Yomesh Gupta. This is the next part in the promise series where we are deep diving into JavaScript promises. In the last part, we talked about what are promises, what are the different behaviors when it comes to promises, what are the different cases. We roughly talked about 18 to 20 different scenarios, and those scenarios are taken as test cases for this particular video. In this video, we are going to build the promise polyfill. It's a pretty advanced front-end interview question that is asked for senior roles. You won't find this type of question a lot on front-end YouTube. Basically, people don't really cover it. Plus, but in this series, I am trying to take a deep dive, give you an end-to-end understanding of JavaScript promises, so that this is one-stop solution for you. That you study these playlist and you're good to go for your interview or basically your dev understanding. Now, coming back to this question, this is asked in companies like Tekion, JioCinema, LinkedIn, MindTickle, and ThoughtSpot, and a lot of more other companies. If you have seen this question in your interview process, you can go to the platform, click on this button, it's highlighted on the screen, and it will give you a pop-up to let me know if you have seen this question. Also, I'm going to solve this question on the Devtools Tech platform. It's listed there. The best way to learn would be just go to the platform. The link would be mentioned in the description. Log in, go to this particular question and start code along with me. Understand and start uh, one-on-one coding with me and map with the test cases that we solved in the last video. I highly recommend that if you are directly coming to this video, then please go and check the first video too. I list the playlist in the description. It's important that you go through that and understand the fundamentals and theory behind what we are going to do in this video. As I said, it's a complex topic, so I'll try to make it as simple as possible. But still, if I miss something, or if something needs more clarity, then please do reach out to me. Do mention in the comments. We can have a discussion around it. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's create the blueprint of our custom promise class. So we have a constructor here, and that constructor will take the executor function, because we have already seen that when we create a new instance with a new keyword and we pass the executor function, it is executed right away and we receive two parameters, resolve and reject. So what we are going to do is we are going to call this executor function, and it will take two parameters, this dot let's say resolve, and this dot reject. Now I need to create these methods, so I'll create underscore resolve, and I'll create underscore reject. Okay, now let's make these methods private also, because we don't want to expose them right now. So by adding a hash, we are making them private inside the class, and let's debug them, or I want to show a particular behavior here. So let's say test, and we are going to do function init return new custom promise. It's going to take a resolve, and it's going to resolve with the value 10, and we are just going to call init for now. So inside this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call, or I'm just going to console log the value of this variable. So now if I run this and I go to my console, it says this is undefined. We are not getting the value here. We are not getting the class instance. Why is that? You can pause the video and let me know. So I'll explain why is that now. So in this case, what we are doing is that we are passing an fn, and or basically we are passing a callback, which is this dot hash resolve and hash reject, and we are calling or invoking this fn at later point of time. So now what is the calling context? So there, since we are just passing and invoking the callback later, this will become global, and in due to the code running in the strict mode, it is becoming as undefined. But what we want is that it should be invoked with the instance or this of that particular instance. So how can we resolve this? We can say resolve this dot resolve bind this, basically this dot resolve, and same will do with reject. this dot reject, and we'll mime this, and here we'll pass not the private methods, we'll pass the, or in this case this would be private methods. Wait, so basically we are binding these resolve and reject methods with the instance of the class, and we are passing those so that when they are invoked later, they are always invoked with the instance of this particular class. So now if I run this, and you will see that you are getting the custom promise and there is resolve and reject on it. Cool. And also we know that if this methods this method executor function breaks, or it throws an error, then we have to bubble that error. So that was one of our cases. So let's handle that. Just to complete this, we'll say catch error, and in this case we are just going to do this dot reject error. So this is the case where let's say our executor function here uh, rejects a promise. Now if it rejects a promise, there is no handling of that rejection, so that's why we are handling catch. Or this is also the case where, let's say, inside our executor function we do something like throw new error. So now how do we are going to catch this error? This try catch will help in that case, that we are throwing a sync error. This catch will get that error and reject and start the promise chain with the reject. Okay, now let's complete the blueprint here. So what we can do here is that we'll create a then method. We are not making it private because we want it on the prototype chain. We'll also have a catch here. Like I mentioned earlier, that when we resolve a promise, we resolve it with the value, and as soon as we call the resolve, the state changes from pending to fulfilled. So initial state was pending and it changes to fulfilled. So now let's create these states. So we'll have states, we'll have pending, which would be pending, uh, fulfilled, fulfilled, and we'll have rejected, which would be rejected, and this will resolve with a value. So we need to store this value. So let's create a variable, and by default this would be undefined, and let's create another private variable to store the state, and we know that initial state is pending, right? So inside our resolve method, we will change the state and we will store this value. So this dot value would become the value, and this dot state would become the state, or not state, it would become states dot fulfilled. We are simply just changing the state, but we also saw that this only happens when the state is pending. Like if pending becomes rejected, we cannot change it to fulfilled. Once it's in our terminal state, we can't do much. So let's add that check here. So we'll say if this dot state is not equal to states dot pending, then we'll simply return from here. We'll not do anything. We can only proceed if the state is not in uh, if it's not in pending, that means it's either fulfilled or rejected. We don't want to do anything. Also, when we resolve, we want to queue this so that it runs in the next micro queue task. So what we can do here is that we can say queue micro task. We'll pass this and we'll schedule a callback here. So we right now what we were doing is basically async sync behavior, that everything was synchronous here. So what we are doing is that when we resolve, we'll queue a new task, or basically a new callback in the micro queue and micro task queue, and when that queue event loop will start picking up tasks, then it will pick this one and it will execute this. Now the same thing, exact same thing we want to do for reject, that it will also be rejected with a value, and the changes here would be that it will still store the state. You can also call it reason or whatnot, but we will still store the value and the state becomes rejected. Only difference is the state becomes rejected. We'll still queue a task, and if it's in pending state, then only we will do something. If it's not in pending, then we'll just simply return. So our resolve is almost done. We'll come back to resolve and see if things are in the right way or not, or do we need to modify anything. Let's implement the then method. From our last video, we know that there are two ways to call the then. One is then resolution handler, and another way would be then resolution handler comma rejection handler. So now this resolution handler, this gets invoked when, or let me take you this example. So if we have a init here, this then method takes two parameters. First is a resolution handler and another is the rejection handler. This resolution handler gets invoked when this init returns a promise. If it's successfully resolved, then we'll call the resolution handler. If it fails or it rejects, then we call the rejection handler. You can name it something else like on fulfilled or on rejection. Whatever you think makes better sense to you, you can name it that way. I'm just taking resolution handler and rejection handler. Now in the last video we saw that this whatever we pass to then this fn or this resolution handler or this rejection handler, this gets wrapped by a new custom promise, like so our then becomes something like new custom promise, that it returns a new custom promise, and that custom promise wraps our resolution handler. Okay, so this is what we saw in the last video. This is the behavior of then, that it always returns a promise no matter from your resolution handler. Like in this case we are returning a primitive value, we are basically returning undefined. Now that undefined will also be get wrapped by a promise. So let's implement at least that much. So in this case what we are going to do is that first we are going to copy these two, and then I'm going to simply return a new custom promise, and it will take two parameter resolve and reject. Okay, and we'll handle that. Now what's the scenario here is that this resolution handler will be called. Okay, and once this resolution handler gets invoked, and either it can be successful or it can be unsuccessful, as in it can be goes into resolved or fulfilled state or rejection state. Based on that we will change the state of our outer promise. So let me copy paste something and show you that. Let me just copy paste the explanation here which I just wrote down. So now our then takes an fn, which is the resolution handler here, or fn or resolution handler. Now this fn, we know that it gets wrapped by a custom promise, and this whole chain can either resolve. Now this fn can either resolve, reject, or this fn could be undefined. I mean, this could be the case where we do something like init then, and we don't pass anything, and we start the chain. We don't pass anything. That could also be there could also be a possibility of that, right? So this fn could either resolve, reject, or it could be just undefined. Now if my fn, this resolution handler, resolves, then the outer promise, this is the outer promise which we are returning, this outer promise should resolve with the result of fn. Try to make sense of this. My internal method that I'm passing to then, my internal callback that I'm passing to then, if this gets successfully resolves, if it resolves, then my outer promise should also resolve with the output of my callback, because we want to bubble the chain. Like my internal my this v dot this, let's say this returns v plus 1. Now this is, there is no error here, it's a happy path, and it, if my original promise is returning 10 and this will return 11. So my outer promise, this outer custom promise, should also resolve with the output of this v plus 1, and it should resolve with 11. The same thing applies, that if it rejects with the some error, that if fn rejects with the error, then my outer promise should also reject with that particular error, so that I can bubble up, and I can bubble and go to the next then or next catch block. And if there is no fn, like we don't have any fn, then it can either my outer promise should either resolve or reject depending on the case. So let's handle that. I need a callback here, so I'll take a then handler. This will take a result, and inside this what I'm going to say is that the first case, if there is no fn, so if I don't have no resolution handler, then I'm going to simply resolve with the result. So this is the case. Let's say my init method here is returning 10, so my result will get 10. And let's say I don't have a resolution handler, then is called where was this, yeah, then is called just like this. The resolution handler is null or undefined. So in that case, my outer promise should be resolved with the value 10, because that was my original result, that was the result that I was passed down. Else what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have this try catch block here. Inside this I'm going to get the result that my resolution handler will pass the result. So this is the case where I'm invoking v plus 1, and I'm passing 10, and 10 plus 1 result is 10, which is coming from init, and this will give me 11, and the result will become 11. Now there are two cases, like let's say that rather than 10 plus 1, it is something like 10, and inside this we are also returning a new promise, new custom promise return. And let's say this gets resolved, there is a set timeout, and this gets resolved with b plus 1, but it will be resolved, it will be happen in an async manner. So the output of result, now this result, the value is not 11, it is a promise or a custom promise in our case. So what we can do here is we can say if result is an instance of custom promise, that I have the that it is all my callback is also returning a promise, I will simply resolve my outer promise. My this promise should be resolved when this internal promise is resolved. Try to think in a try to visualize this, that my internal method is returning a promise. Earlier it was returning a primitive value, now it is returning a promise. So when my internal promise is resolved, then my outer promise should resolve. So I'll just pass the resolve here, and I'll pass the reject here. Else this is the case when this one we are getting 11. So in this case we are simply going to resolve it, and we are going to pass the result here. And if there is an error, then we'll just simply reject with this error. We can do return reject, but it won't make any difference. Now we need to store this handler also, because we saw in the last video that whatever we pass and all these wrappers, they are stored in an array kind of a thing, like then handler 1, then handler 2, and when we change the state, these all are executed one by one. So let me create that state. So I'll create a resolution handlers array. Let's say by default it's an empty array. I can simply do a rejection also, rejection handlers here only, and I will just simply push it. So I'll say this dot uh, resolution handlers, I'll just push it, then handler here. I want to do the same thing for my rejection case. So what I can do here is that I can just copy paste all this, and I can just call it catch handler. I'll push it here, and inside this I'm just going to make those changes, the same changes I'm going to make, that if I don't have a rejection handler, let's say I don't have a rejection handler, it happens with reject 10, then I'm just simply going to reject my outer promise. And here, rather than calling a resolution handler, I'll call rejection handler. So this is handling of the rejection handler case if you are still confused. If it still returns a promise, because from the catch block also, if we have a same logic applies here, that if we have a catch block, or we can say in this case also that right now it's just returning undefined console.log error, but from here also we can return a promise. So if it's a promise, then we will do the same thing, result dot then resolve or reject, else we'll just simply resolve it with the result. And in this case, if it's an error, then we'll reject the error, we'll bubble the error. So it's the same thing that's happening in the both the cases. It's just that we are either in this case we are calling rejection handler, earlier we were used to calling the resolution handler. Now we need to also invoke this, right? Or before invoking, or let's complete this itself, let me just close this, we'll close the catch handler, we'll push it. Now we also know that there was a case in our last video where what was happening is that, let's say I have a promise that changed the state from pending to fulfilled, and once it is fulfilled, then also we were able to attach callbacks like x is equal to x console log x, right? Since my promised already changed state, then this callback should not wait and it should be executed right away. So let's handle those cases here. So if my this dot state is already states dot fulfilled, then I'm just going to call, let's create a method, we'll just define it, run resolution handlers. We'll just basically what we are going to we are saying is that if our state is fulfilled, then whatever then handlers we created, we should just invoke, we basically we iterate the array and invoke each and every then handler. Else if this dot state, the same thing applies to the rejection also, that if states dot rejected, then this dot run rejection handler. Oh, I created the same thing, this should be resolution. Now let's create these. So I'll come here, I'll do resolution handlers. I'm saying if this dot resolution handler dot length, if I have this, then I'm going to say this dot resolution handlers dot for each, I'll have the handler and I'll call the handler with basically this dot result or value in this case. And once it's done, we'll do resolution handlers with an empty array. Basically what we are doing here is, then when catch is called, we create a then handler, we push it into the array. So basically you know the runtime is checking your code, it says that we find a then handler, we push it into the into an array, we find a catch handler, we push it into an array. Right now the promise is still in pending state, it is not resolved, or it is not fulfilled or rejected, it is just you know scanning your code. And in that case we are just pushing the data, and when my state changes from pending to fulfilled, then I'm going to iterate over this array and process all the handlers. The same thing we can do with rejection handlers. So in this case what I'll have is rejection handlers, I think we are not pushing it in the correct queue. Yeah, this would be rejection handlers, catch handler is here. Also we saw that this whole processing should start when the state changes, right? When the state change from pending to fulfilled, then we need to execute all our then callbacks. So inside our resolve, what we can do is we can just simply call it run resolution handlers. The same thing applies here. We'll do run rejection handlers. Do we have this? Yeah, run rejection handlers, resolution handlers. Now our catch is pending, still pending. So we know that catch also takes a rejection handler. Like if we have a catch block, we can have something like x console log x, or in this case error, and we'll have the error here. So we are having this particular callback which is called rejection handler here. Now we can simply reuse our then callback here. What we can do is that return this dot then will pass first as null and the second as rejection handler, because our then block already takes care of rejection handler. So if we pass the first as null, then this whole then handler thing is kept. I mean, it's not processed in this case. And uh, since we are already returning a promise from here, return new promise, so when we do return this dot then, this catch already returns a custom promise now. So let's try to run this code to see if it is working. So I just wrote it in one go. I haven't tested it. So let's see. So I comment this out and I run this. Oh, Q microtask is not defined. So I think my spelling is wrong. Q micro, let me check the spelling. Q micro, oh, T is smaller as in lowercase. Let me run this again. So my first test case is passing, but second test case is stuck, so it's not executing right now. It says promise resolution not called. So let me go to my test cases screen. It will take a couple of seconds, but it will start printing all the test cases. My second, which one was failing? Second was failing, right? It says that executor handler is called when promise is resolved. Promise tools tech and actual. Okay, so let's check the code. We have a custom promise here, and then we have a then callback. So in our case, the then callback is not getting called. So let me debug that. So we return a promise, we have a then handler, we have resolution handlers where we are pushing the then handler. If we don't have the resolution handler, then we'll just simply return resolve. And in the try, we have the resolution handler with the result. If result is an instance of custom promise, then we'll do result dot then resolve and reject. Okay, I think I got the problem, because this is again result and result. Let's rename it. So let's rename it something else. We call it return. I think because we are already defining the result here, and inside the catch also, let's call it return and resolve resolve with returned. Resolved with return, and here also resolved with return. So see, in this case, you can go to Devtools Tech platform. If you're solving a question, there are test cases. You can see the result, and here you can see all the test cases with explanation and the code of the test case. So this will help you. So let's run our code again to see what's the output. Are we passing all the test cases, or if there is more bug? So sixth one is failing. It's saying done called multiple times. Resolution handlers can be attached when promise is resolved. Okay, you can go and check the test cases. Let me just read the code if I'm making some mistake again. We have resolution handlers, we are binding them, then we are calling the executor function here. We are queuing a micro task, and the states are fulfilled. In reject also we are doing state, if not pending then returning, else we are changing the state. In run resolution handlers we are calling it, and then we are okay, oh, we are setting it on a wrong property. This should be hash. I think same issue here. Now if I run this right now, so the first test case is passing, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so all our test cases are passing, so that means our polyfill is done. So just to iterate what we have done so far, that we first had this executor method, and this executor method is invoked right away, so we are calling it in the constructor. We are passing this dot resolve and this dot reject here because this expects two parameters, and we are binding them so that they have the right invocation when they are invoked later on. And we, if it throws an error, or it, there is some error, sync error, then we'll catch it and we'll start the rejection promise chain. Okay, now if we come to our resolve, we are queuing a micro task. If we know that in our resolve changes state from pending to fulfilled, it can only work if the state is pending. If it's a terminal state like fulfilled or rejection, then it won't work. So that's why we are having this guardrail condition here, that if it's not pending, then we'll return, else we'll store the value that is resolved, that the value which resolved was called with. We'll change the state from pending to fulfilled, and we'll call all the resolution handlers. Now from where these resolution handlers are coming in, these are the resolution handlers, basically the callbacks that we pass to then the first parameter here. So now when we pass it to then, we know that then returns a custom promise, or wraps our call resolution handler with a promise. So that's why we'll have this returning a new custom promise. We create a new then handler to make things easy for us. Now this then handler will provide us safety, plus also this controls the state of our custom promise, that if our resolution handler returns a custom promise, as in our resolution handler returns a promisify thing, then we will resolve our outer promise when this internal promise is resolved. That's why we are saying then, and we are passing resolve and reject. Else, if it's our returned value from the resolution handler is a primitive value, then we are right away resolving. And if this resolution handler doesn't exist, then we are just resolving the outer promise. And if God forbids there is an error, then we'll just start the rejection chain. Now going back to our reject case. Now in reject is also rejected with a value or a reason, whatever you want. The same thing is happening. If it's not pending, then we'll just return. Else we'll store the value, will change the state from pending to rejected, and we'll call all the run rejection handlers. Basically that is just a loop thing, that these methods are looping over resolution handlers, invoking them and then resetting the array. And the case of rejection handler is exactly the same as then handler, that this we create a wrapper called catch handler just to make things easy for us. Now this catch handler will manage or will control the state of the outer promise. If my rejection handler is not present, then I'm going to reject the outer promise right away. We don't want to do anything. Else we'll call the rejection handler. This can return two things. It can either return a primitive value or it can return a promise. If it's a promise, then we want to resolve or reject the outer promise when this internal promise is over, it's in a terminal state. So that's why we say return dot then, we'll say resolve or reject. Now if my internal promise, which is this return, is rejected, it calls my reject, then it will go to catch and it will reject the outer promise also. It might not even require to go to catch, because this reject will start the rejection chain. If it's a primitive value, then we'll just simply resolve with the returned value. Else if we have an error, then we'll start the rejection chain. We'll push the rejection handlers here and we'll push the resolution handlers here. Now when then methods are queued, if the state is already fulfilled by then we'll call them right away. If a catch callback is queued and it is rejected, then we'll call the rejection right away, rejection handlers executing right away. And in my catch block or my catch method, I am just reusing the then because it's just taking care of everything, and we are just passing the first parameter as null. So this is the end of the video. I hope you were able to learn at least something from this video and it made sense. If I know it's a complex topic, so might not be 100% clear in the first go. You can watch the videos a couple of times and take a pause and try to visualize things. If you feel that I missed out something or something needs more clarity, then please do mention in the comments or do reach out to me. The best way I would say is go to the DevTools Tech platform, sign up, go to this question, start solving, refer my solution and your own logic building, and try to build the solution in your own way. And maybe you can code along with me, so that would also be helpful. The benefit, as I mentioned, of the DevTools Tech platform is that it's a curated platform for front-end engineers, specifically built by a front-end engineer. It's not like that, I am some company that's selling you a lot of courses, or that is, wants to just make money out of you. The thing is that the platform really helps the front-end people, the community I work with, and that's why I make these videos to, give back to the community, to talk about topics that are not well covered. So that's why I say go to the platform, check it out. If you feel like it's helping, it's value addition, you can get the subscription. You can go to this link, devtools.tech/practice, that is shown on the screen. If you are worried or overwhelmed where to start, this will give you one random question. You can do that for the day and log off and come next day and try the same link, and you'll give you a random question from our platform. So till next time, see you, take care, bye bye.